So in this video, we're going to look at section 5.5, which is on simple interest. And this is the last section before the exam and the last part of chapter 5. So the first thing we're going to talk about is interest. So there's some few key terms that you need to know about interest. The first one is called the principal. And the principal is the original amount of money borrowed or deposited on which interest is calculated. And then the interest is the fee charged by a lender to borrow money. So anytime you're borrowing money from a bank or from the credit card, or if you do a credit card or for a loan, they charge you interest. So they charge you amount of money to be able to borrow that money. There's also interest when you deposit money in like a 401k or a bank account, and then you can get interest, and that benefits you versus when it's a loan, it does not benefit you. So the interest rate and that first word is interest, is stated as a percent and is charged for the amount borrowed per period of time, and usually 1 year. And then you've probably seen the APR, which is on credit cards. That's the annual percentage rate, which short again is APR. And that's the annual interest rate associated with credit cards. And then there's two types of interest. They're called simple interest and compound interest. So simple interest is when the interest is calculated on the original principal only. So you only get interest from the interest from prior periods is not used in calculations for the following period. So you're just taking interest on the principal, and that's it. Compound interest means interest is added to the principal, and then the interest that has been added also earns interest. Okay, so this is good again if it's somewhere like a 401k or a bank account or a CD where you're getting more and more money. But if it's a loan, it's not good because they're charging you on what you owe and then also on the interest that keeps adding to what you owe, which is why it takes a really long time to pay off loans. Now, in this class, we're just going to do simple interest. If you're taking 125, then you'll look more into compound interest and more types of interest. So for simple interest, we looked at this formula already, we did already, but we find it by doing I equals PRT. And I, again, stands for the interest. P, again, stands for the principal, which is the original amount. R is the rate. As a decimal, it has to be a decimal. So you have to change any percentage to a decimal. And T is the time in years, and it's always years. Okay, so if it's not in years, then we have to convert our time to years. So let's look at a few examples. Oh, sorry, before we do that, it says the total cost with simple interest. And so the total cost is always the interest plus the principal. Okay, so I stands for interest if you want to write it out, plus the principal. And that will give us the total amount that we either owe or that we get. So let's look at a problem. It says you get a student loan from the Educational Assistance Foundation to pay for your educational expenses this year. Find the interest, so we're looking for I, on the loan if you borrowed 2,008% for 1 year. Okay. So we want to look at what we need and what we know. So we want to find I don't know that. It says we borrowed. So whatever we borrowed is always the principal. So my principal is 2,000. The rate is 8%. We have to change it to a decimal. So anytime we change a percent to a decimal, we divide by 100 and we get 0.08. Or again, you can move the decimal place 2 to the left. Our time has to be in years, which it is 1 year. And then from there, we just plug it into the formula. So the interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the year. And then I usually just type this all in to my calculator at one time. If you want to do it in parts, you would multiply left to right. So you'd multiply 2000 times 0.08, which is 160. And then you would multiply that by 1, which is just 160. And so that is the interest that we earned. And that's what the question asked for. So we're done. We don't need to find anything else. So let's look at a second example. We're going to find the interest on a loan of 2,500 that is borrowed at 9% for 7 months. How much would it cost to repay the loan? Okay, so we're trying to find the total cost because we want to find how much to repay the loan. So again, the total cost is the interest plus the principal, but I first have to find the interest. So anytime to find the interest, I use the formula PRT. That's what I have to do first. So let's identify what we have. We have the loan amount, which is 2,500. And so that is my P, 2,500. It's borrowed at 9%. So that means my rate is 9%. We have to change it to a decimal. Anytime we change a rate to a decimal, we divide by 100, a percentage to a decimal. And we get 0.09. Okay, now the time is where you have to be really careful. In the formula, the time has to be in years, right? And this is in months. So we have to change it to years. Okay, so we know that there are 12 months equals 1 year. And so we have to use that idea. We have to convert it. So if we have 7 months, we're going to multiply by the months goes on the bottom. So 12 months goes on the bottom and 1 year goes on the top. So really we're just doing 7 times 1. We're dividing by 12. You can do that as a shortcut. Okay, now 7 divided by 12 gives you, if you divide in your calculator, 0.583333. So because it does not give me a decimal that ends, which is called truncating, we're going to leave it as a fraction. Again, we'll just use our calculators to find these. So that we're going to find the interest. So we take the principal, which is 2,500, multiply the rate, which is 0.09. I'm just plugging it into this formula, multiply by the time, 7/12. Okay? And then again, I would highly recommend just typing this all in your calculator. You want it as a decimal because we're talking about money. So you can just type in like 2,500 times 0.09 times 7 divided by 12. And if you do that, you get 131.25. And for the 7/12, just type in like 7 and then the divide sign 12. So that's my interest. And then the total cost, again, is the interest plus the principal. So I would take that interest and I would add the principal, which was the initial amount of 2,500. And I get 2,631.25. And so that is what I owe. Okay, so that is our second example. Okay, so for our third example, we want to see approximately how long will it take for an initial investment of $825 to become $1,000 if it's invested at 3.5% simple interest. Okay, so we are trying to find how long, which means we're trying to find T, the time. Okay. We know the initial investment is $825. Initial investment is always the principal. So again, what we initially borrowed or invested is the principal. We want it to become $1,000. Okay, so here's where we have to be really careful. We know that the total cost is equal to $1,000. That's not the interest, that's the total cost of what we want. And it's invested at a rate of 3.5%. So again, we're going to take 3.5. We're going to divide it by 100 because it's a percentage. If you do that, you get 0.035. Okay. So here's the problem. I don't know I either, and I don't know T. And remember, this is my formula. And to solve an equation, I have to know all of the things except one. And so I'm looking for T, so I need to find I first. So to find I, the interest, we can always find I by doing, we said, again, the total cost equals I plus P. Okay, so if I just say the total cost is C, I plus P. If I want to find the interest, it's kind of rearranging that formula. We take the cost and we subtract the principal, and that will give me the interest. So if in real life it makes sense, I'm just going to take how much I have at the end and subtract how much I have at the beginning, and that would give me my interest, how much I earned. So I'm going to take 1,000 and subtract 825 to get my interest. And that gives me, right? Sorry, there we go. That gives me 175. And so now I can use that to find my T. So I'm gonna have I equals PRT. I'm gonna plug 175 in for the interest. I'm gonna plug 825 for my P, my rate of 0.035, and then I'm gonna leave it as T. Okay, and if you want to make it X, because T is kind of hard to see, that's fine. Okay, we're gonna first multiply these, simplify anything we can on one side of the equation. This gives us 28.875 if I multiply those. And then we're gonna solve this equation. It's being multiplied so to solve, we divide both sides by what's in front of the T. Okay, so we're gonna do 175 divided by 28.875. And we get T, I'm gonna just do 2 decimal places, is 6.06 years. Okay, so that is how we find the time when we have the interest. So that's for this video. I'll make another one of the last few examples, but that's how we do the first few examples on interest.